Hello, welcome back to the channel. This is the Alpine A290, which is a kind of fast, sporty version of the Renault 5. I'll talk you through the inside and then go for a drive. Stay tuned.
Outside and in the A290 is jazzier than the Renault 5 on which it's based. Both use a new electric platform, you see, and it's small. The A290 is under 4 metres long. It's front-motored with two power options, 180 or 220 metric horsepower, but mechanically they're the same, with the same 52 kilowatt-hour skateboardy battery, which is stressed to increase body rigidity. There's multi-link suspension at the rear and the struts at the front, and the Alpine gets bespoke spring damper and anti-roll bar settings, of course, but also its own aluminium front subframe, which puts the motor in a different place to in the Renault 5, and it's lighter too. All in, the A290 weighs 1,479 kilos, distributed 57% to the front, 43% to the rear. It'll arrive in the UK next March, with prices from the low 30,000s, with the higher powered version, which this one is, at more like 38 grand.
Okay, welcome to the inside of the A290. Alpine says it has gone for a Formula One inspired steering wheel, which means it's not entirely round, but it has some buttons on it. This big OV is an overtake button, which gives you access to full acceleration, but if you just go past the kick down port in the throttle, that does the same thing. There's a regen change mode here. I quite like regen changing on the paddles because it sort of gives you something on to do on the way into a corner, but I like how it's very easy to get to, and there is a drive mode change button here. There's quite a lot of stuff you can sort of play with on the touch screen, sort of slightly gaming it. You know, it's got some stuff where you can test your 0 to 60 times and things like that. Otherwise, this is a very clean cabin. I like the material quality very much. Renault does a very good single big button for you to get the driver assistance systems to your preference. So if you want steering assistance off because it's annoying, if you want traffic sign recognition off because it's annoying and it gets it wrong, it's one button away rather than being buried on a touch screen, and I like that very much. Slightly bafflingly, you know, the A110 has its gear shift selector down here. So does this, rather than it being elsewhere. But that means there are no cup holders. Fine, it's a sports car. I'm not, you know, if that's the decision they've made, fair enough. But I do think it's a baffling decision for them to think, you know what, Alpine owners, they don't drink coffee. A modern car with no cup holder. I cannot think of another normal brand new car that is in that situation. But anyway, I'm going to sit in the back. This is me behind my own driving position. I'm sort of 5'10". I've got a couple of fingers of legroom. Actually, headroom's not bad. Roof lining is quite cool, but bafflingly, back here, there are no door pockets. There are no cup holders either. I mean, I know you can hold your own stuff when you're in the back because you're driving. You're not driving, but that's mad. Okay, welcome then to the inside of the A290. I've got a good driving position, really figure-hugging but comfortable seats that I like very much. Detect, I don't know, whether a little bit of chop in the ride would be overstating it, but it's certainly quite a controlled ride. It doesn't let it bounce or float, but it's not absorbent in the same way that a lot of EVs, because they have heavy bodies, you know, the body can be quite flat. This is, you know, this is taken up and down by some bumps. I don't know if you can hear the noise. There is a particular sort of Alpine sound, apparently, which is quite a boomy, whooshy thing, but it's not annoying. It's not like the Abarth 500's noise when you turn that on, which just gets quite irritating quite quickly. And it is also not, it doesn't have gear shifts, fake gear shifts like the Hyundai Ioniq 5 does. I mentioned those two cars because they feel like, to me, the other two cars that you might describe as, loosely in the Hyundai's case, hot hatchbacks. The internally combusted hot hatchback kind of died, really. I mean, there's a couple still around, but not very many. And there hasn't naturally been a replacement. I think the Abarth is probably the first one. The Hyundai is a different sort of car. It's much bigger, it's heavier, it's more expensive. It's kind of a sports saloon, isn't it? I mean, I know it's a hatchback, but it's not a hot hatch of the traditional sense. And I think this, finally, really is. And I'm quite excited about that. In terms of its weight and stuff, it's 1,500 kilos. That is much more than a combusted hot hatch of sub 4 meters would be, but it's not a lot by EV standards. Alpine wants its cars to feel light. 1,500 kilos isn't heavy, but actually you can make a car feel lighter by giving it light and responsive control weights. This has relatively light steering. I don't get loads of road feel back in terms of cornering grip. As you increase cornering forces, you don't get a build up of force in the steering wheel that way. But what you do get is some torque steer. As I accelerate, I can sort of feel the car tugging the wheel, the steering wheel left and right a bit. And actually, I don't mind that. I'm happy to have some interaction, some engagement. I mean, I can change the regen mode like this, but it would almost give a little more engagement if I could change that via a couple of paddles and give me a little bit more to do when sort of driving on a decent back road. But there is some involvement here. There is some fun here. An Abarth is more sort of tied down, and an Ioniq 5N is much bigger, more accomplished. That gets it's sort of 700 kilos heavier than this, I would think, of a 5N. So what that does is it manipulates where it puts torque and how it does it to try and make itself feel very agile. This is naturally a more agile car, and it doesn't have all of the fancy torque vectoring stuff because it's only front wheel drive rather than four wheel drive. What it can do though is pull the brake on an inside rear to help the car turn in on corner entry, and how effectively it does that depends on what drive mode you're in. So if you're in the sporty drive mode, it will do that more to make it feel more agile. There is an open differential at the front rather than limited slip differential, but it mimics a limited slip diff by braking, for example, an inside front. As I accelerate out of that corner, it could apply the inside brake that side, to effectively divert power to the outside. That helps the car turn, and that mimics a limited slip diff to an extent. And it also means that as I accelerate out of this bend, for example, it doesn't wash out, it wants to pull the car around. So there's stuff going on. And the nice thing about it is that we haven't really had these conversations about cars like this since the combusted hot hatchback disappeared. You know, this is the first time that we've started having these conversations about this kind of car. There have been fast EVs. I mean, there are some EV hypercars, and there are fast saloons like the Taycan and the Tesla Model S Plaid and so on and so forth. But what there are not is more affordable end of the scale fun EVs designed for people who really like driving. This has got a 52 kilowatt hour battery. I've done 113 kilometers, so what's that, about 70 miles. I've used 60%, no, I've got 60% left on the charge. I've been reasonably cautious-ish today, driving up here, but then I've gone, you know, we've given it some beans. Now I've got to this road, so I think that's probably about what you would expect if you had one of these. So that maybe is what, 160 miles, something like that, in all-round driving, normal all-round driving. You get more if you were really careful. But it's a hot hatch. Why should you have to want to be really careful? God, I really pulled the steering in on the way out of that corner. There's fun to be had here, you know.
That then is the A290 on the road. But how much fun is this electric hot hatchback on a circuit?
So the people from Alpine say that the A290 has been set up that it will move around as you turn in and you lift off, and it will rotate in a way that you may remember Renault Sport products used to do for quite some time. Lift off in a Clio or lift off in a Megane. They would really sort of get tucked in at the nose, and the rear would really turn. You'd get some lateral load into the back end, have to straighten the steering, and with a dab of Oppo, you'd be away. They say that the Alpine is going to do that too. That would be unusual. There are not many cars, not many modern EVs that do that. Actually, not many hot hatches do it, full stop. It's quite a tight, short little circuit which is a good idea because that is really the problem with running an EV on track is one, heat thermal management, and two, extended running at high speeds really drains the battery. Right, so I've turned everything off. First corner, 120 kph, 105 kph now, and it turns and it grips, and as you turn in there is some adjustability to it, certainly. This is full whack, it's got up to 150 k's. Braking is pretty steady and straight, but if you move the steering around it will sort of shuffle around as you're braking. Steering is sort of reasonably feelsome actually. Just ridden the curb there and it does it with some absorbance, which is nice. Stand on the brakes in a straight line, turn in slightly on the brakes, and there it goes. The back does start to come around, not as wildly as I think it would have done in a Megane or a Clio, but it does happen. And just into that corner then I just trailed the brakes in and it just helps the back turn around. It's good, you know. I haven't driven loads of EVs on circuit. I mean, there aren't loads of EVs that really want to be driven on circuit. Don't think I've driven the Abarth. Have driven the Ioniq 5N. Oh, there it goes. Hello. If you just pitch it right, yes, the back end will just sway round and get really involved. I want to do that again because that's a lot of fun. That's cool. I mean, it might take a particular kind of corner to do it. That one is quite nice because it's sort of long and it... Let's try it there. There we go. This is cool. This is cool. So on the road I was thinking, yeah, this is good fun. This is a nice, pleasant, semi-sporting hot hatch to drive. But the way it moves around there and the way it wants you to move around is a sort of, has a seriousness to its performance that I don't think the Ioniq 5N is the only other EV really that has that kind of playfulness that really wants you to mess around with it. Certainly not, it's not like it just wants to break away at every corner. It's not like driving a Toyota GR86 or some of the front wheel drive hot hatchbacks like a Ford Fiesta ST or the Clio 197 or the Renault Sport Megane, some of the perhaps earlier ones than the very last ones. It is more front-led than perhaps they are. It feels perhaps more like a Golf GTI Club Sport, in that it's mostly front-led, but it will just involve the rear wheels in the cornering process too, if you just get it right. And although it's a more compact car than a Golf, it's probably no lighter, probably heavier than that Golf. Bit of a hoot though. I'll get a checkered flag this time around, so I can only got one more corner of messing around. Yeah, there it goes. If you just bung it in, basically, give it a massive bung, then it will start to play ball. What a very fun thing. To be continued out on the road, I suppose. I liked this car on the road already. It's grown on me quite a lot more, knowing what it will do on track, and it doesn't seem to have overheated. Some EVs you will drive on circuit and they just go, sorry mate, can't do this. That was driving it quite hard, not for that long, all right, only for like 5 minutes, I suppose. But still, it was game. I forget what the fuel consumption was when I started. Fuel consumption battery level, I want to say it was about 50 something percent. I think that's taken 10% out of the battery, which is fine. I mean, on a track day stint, I think stints of 3, 4, 5 laps are enough anyway. I think the ideal that Caterham was working on when it tried to develop its electric 7 was like 20 minutes on circuit, 20 minutes recharging, 20 minutes on circuit, 20 minutes recharging, and it would be and for it to have the ability to do that. By and large, I think this stands up to that kind of use. The issue is not many race circuits have high-speed chargers because they just don't have the capacity at the track to install them. They're quite often out in the middle of nowhere, aren't they? They just don't have enough power to go in to dedicate 550 kilowatt chargers, whatever it might be. But in the right place, find the right spot. This is really enjoyable. I think this car is good enough that the hot hatch fan can start to get excited again about the prospect of them. So thank you very much for joining me. We're here at least every week on this channel. Meantime, you can find more over at autocar.co.uk, including a full written review of this car and all of its technical details. And you can find more from the entire 129, nearly 130-year Autocar archive over at the magazine shop/Autocar. It's an amazing resource. I recommend it to you. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll see you next time.